Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone, salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Greetings to all fellow members of the book club. Hello everyone, Bapak and Ibu, members of the MONEV book club. Welcome to MONEV book club episode 2 by MONEV Studio in collaboration with ECOI, Evaluation Community of India, to review and discuss one of the must-have monitoring and evaluation book, the Purposeful Program Theory. I'm Filzah Izati Isma, as the Program and Operation Officer of MONEV Studio. Also, the host for the book club is pleased to be here with you to welcome all of the members to the club. Before we begin, I would like to announce and read the class rule. But I want to highlight one of the main rule, make sure to turn off your microphone and also to rename the name to the format as follow: name, institution, or organization by clicking on the rename option on your Zoom profile. Next, I also would like to briefly introduce about MONEV Book Club by MONEV Studio. MONEV Book Club is dedicated by MONEV Studio to facilitate regular learning and upgrade on monitoring and evaluation concept, techniques for reflection toward members' monitoring and evaluation projects, programs, and organizations. This is also to facilitate a consistent platform of monitoring and evaluation book discussion to enable monitoring and evaluation learner or professional to apply the new knowledge directly to improve their monitoring and evaluation activities. And also to build comfort and teamwork within the club members for the better monitoring and evaluation atmosphere, and to create opportunities to meet and discuss monitoring and evaluation topic as mutual interest in a more informal setting. And lastly, to build and deepening monitoring and evaluation relationship through shared learning. Okay, moreover, MONEV Book Club is part of MONEV 4.0. MONEV 4.0 is an ecosystem to facilitate better monitoring and evaluation literacy and practices. The ecosystem is trying to connect all development stakeholders from the government actors, both national, local, bilateral, or multilateral organization, development partners, community, students, civil society with inclusive learning in monitoring and evaluation concept, theories, principles, and implementation techniques for conducting good monitoring and evaluation. We also develop MONEV 4.0 as an open source learning activities and facilities in monitoring and evaluation. We present available for Android users. The learning platform include MONEVpedia, MONEV Podcast, MONEV Learning, MONEV Book Club, Buku Saku, MONEV, and many others, as you can see on the screen. Now, I would like to give the floor to Ibu Ari Agustin, the associate of MONEV Studio, who will be moderating the session from the beginning to end, also to introduce the set of panelists for the book review today. Ibu Ari is a monitoring and evaluation professional with more than 10 years of working experiences with many organizations, as you may read on the slides. Without further ado, Ibu Ari, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Filzah. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ari Ratna Agustin. Welcome to our book review today. I would like to welcome also our book reviewer, Benedictus Dwi Aguste Pantoro. He is a senior associate in MONEV Studio. We've got here Ms. Ratna Mathur as well from the Evaluation Committee of India. And we've got our guest commentator, Professor Patricia Rogers, one of the book authors herself. Thank you very much all for providing your invaluable weekend time to join this event. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yep, let's manage our expectation. We hope you have read the book Purposeful Program Theory by Funnell and Patricia Rogers before, so you could be active in the discussion and have fun. Speak and ask questions and comments on the book, but please convey them in a good manner and be constructive. We can agree and decide as well on what book to read in the next episode. For your information, today's book club is the second of 6 events planned to be conducted regularly once in 3 months throughout 2022 to 2024. So if you are interested in participating in the others, please mark your calendar and keep updated with the info from MONEV Studio Instagram. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite our book reviewer today, Benedictus Dwi Agus Tekantoro. Well, I call him Mas Dwi Agus. Some of you might have known him as well. Mas Dwi Agus has got 20 years of working experience in the development field. He is a specialist in program planning, monitoring, and evaluation, and proven ability to facilitate design or planning processes. Mas Dwi Agus, please, the time and mic are yours.
Thank you, Mbak Ari. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I know this is a very good mornings to spend in the weekends, but I appreciate your allocating time for us for our discussions. Let me share my PowerPoints. Let's see. Can you see the slide?
Yes,
Can
Mas
you
Dwi
hear
Agus.
my voice?
Yes,
Good.
yes,
Good.
clear.
So yes, this book is very important to me. I mean, I bought this book like almost 10 years ago. I was introduced to this book by my mentor, and it happens to be kind of like an eye-opening book for me. So I would like to kind of like walk through just maybe just some highlights of the content of the book that might be interesting for you. Absolutely, there's no way to capture the whole book, the whole content of the book, but probably I just want to highlight several things that I find it very useful and very exciting. And actually, part 1 and part 2 covering the definition of program theory. So actually it's helping me understanding more about the program theory and understanding also the contextual use of it. And as you can probably, if you read the book, there is a part 3 that actually guiding us through the process of developing program theory, including the theory of change and theory of actions. And then I think the most interesting and useful part is the part number 4. I often use it all the time when I deliver training of theory of change or anything about program theory, which contains the example of the program theory and also including the program archetype that has implication of program theory. And part 5, use of program theory and for the monitoring and evaluations. So that's the main highlights of this presentation, I guess. So I guess first, when I heard the program theory, sometimes we are kind of like confused with other terminology, and I was quite overwhelmed with many title of terminology that people use. But I guess my mentor used to say that don't worry about the titling, but you need to understand the very basic concept of the program theory. In this case, I would appreciate this book because actually it's not only clarifying the definition and use of the program theory, but also is clarifying the history of it. So it makes me aware that this is not new. I guess in the book it mentioned that that's the myth, the main myth of the program theory. This is sometimes people they say it's new, but yes, there are several theoretical background or theoretical development there before even program theory established. So, including the 5 level of learning by Kirkpatrick, there's some CIPP, and job or result change. These are the all these concepts that I'm aware of during my what you call it involvement in the M&E fields, including the logic model, realist evaluations, and outcome mapping. This is something that probably most of you are familiar also with, and also theory-driven evaluation. So it's also, this book actually helping me in clarifying the definition and use, I guess. Actually, program theory, like the book says, like the Ibu Prof. Patricia Rogers emphasized in the book, that it has key feature of theory of change and theory of action, but we can discuss later. And the most important thing that I'm also aware that this is going to be useful for planning and designs. It helps us in communicating what I mean by, what actually our program is doing. And it actually could, create engagement, because we can have a common understanding with other stakeholders, and it actually provide opportunity for engagement to work together for achieving the objective or the goal of the program. And of course, for implementation management, actually, so we use it to identify what it works, what doesn't work, and what need to be changed, and what need to be tweaked to ensure that we stick with the program objective, and if we need it, we need to change the strategy. And last but not least, actually useful for monitoring and evaluations. Probably this is something that useful for us as an evaluator as well. And like I said, there are so many theoretical backgrounds, but I found this realist evaluation by Paulson and Tiley, and actually it's something that I found is very clear and as a conceptual basis for program theory, understanding that to achieve an outcomes, or try to get into the ideal or intended conditions, you need to be clear what you put into it as a resource, and you need to understand what you're trying to do, and what actually the mechanisms, the explanation of why your intervention the outcome. So I think there's some feedback, and but also understanding the context. So this is basically I found the most important conceptual basis for program theory. This is for me, I guess. And then you can see sometimes we as evaluators or sometimes program facilitators, I tend to be frustrated with the programs when there is a unclarity or what you call it, not being able to grasp the mechanism behind a program, how actually we're doing this will lead to certain goals. So like in the book mentioned is about the black box. So unpacking this black box is something that evaluators or program monitoring evaluation practitioners need to do. It's very often need to do that. And that's why it's very useful to have this program theory, because this program theory actually this is the definition of the program theory. Maybe I should go to this one first. So the program theory actually just try to unpack this black box, and my understanding is this is my mental model of the program theory, that program theory contains this theory of change that provide the narrative explaining the mechanism on how actually certain certain changes will lead to some bigger changes that we intend to achieve. But there's also going to have theory of actions, something that more practical that will activate the theory of change. If you look at the definition here, I don't need to read it. Of course, you can read it in the book as well. You can get more understanding about it when you read the books or the difference between the definitions. But my understandings to this concept is actually by putting this in the kind of like a mental model here. And I guess based on this book, I need to I learned that we need to understand also the simple, complicated, complex program. So we don't treat programs equally, because you might have a program that very simple ones, just focus on one issue, but sometimes we have a program that actually focus on different issue and more complex. Sometimes sometimes a program has complicated governance because it involves different stakeholders. You need to be engaged and manage them in certain way. So this need to be treated differently when we actually identify the program theory, including the consistency in the approach, the what you call it, the sufficiency or the trajectory. I guess my interpretation that's more approaches, more variations of the intervention, and more alternative pathway or more unknowns within the program means more complex program. And then sometimes it need to be taken into consideration when you use the program theory there. And my reflection is, I guess this is I heard also from many what you call it, evaluators here, that we need to what you will avoid oversimplifying, but don't also make it overcomplicated as well. So so try to find a balance between not to oversimplify, but also not to be overcomplicated and make people doesn't understand and doesn't want to engage you for discussing about the program theory. And the next part is actually quite useful about the process for developing program theory. I guess this is the process that commonly what you call it, practiced by many people, I guess, in many situations. Of course, you need to we need to decide who actually will develop the program theory and actually who could facilitate it. Program and funders, managers, officer, staff can develop that. I guess we can facilitate that as an evaluator. I guess evaluators and program theories. I just found the program theories terminology is quite interesting. Maybe Prof. Patricia could explain more later on. That sometimes I'm curious who actually this program theories. Is it somebody who is expert in the subject matter, in the sector, that we can tap on their knowledge somehow? But actually, the most important thing, actually, we should involve the program client, partner agency or beneficiary, funders, in the discussion and developing of the program theory. I guess this is important, to get some understanding about what the intended outcome and benefit, and also what is needed from them to achieve. Sometimes it's useful to get a clarity on and the same understanding about what the success look like. So by the end of the program, for example, we talk and discuss the same language about the same outcome or the same goals. And I guess for program implementation management team, of course, need to be involved. this is not the exercise of the senior management level only, but also sometimes in the implementation management team level. I guess for them to be able to provide input when designing the intervention and develop strategic work plans. But I guess my reflection is about that program theories. Somehow, should I be a program theorist as well? Or yeah, maybe this is for discussions. There's several mix of approaches proposed in the book. I guess the three approaches is very important. The first one is to try to articulating mental model of the stakeholders, meaning that we need to get stakeholders' understanding and perception on how the program should work and how they would like to see if it is successful. And there's a process we call the deductive developments, like try to draw out from the project documentation, or maybe some literature and some documented references. So actually put it on the table as a hypothesis of the program. The third approach actually in inductive developments, observing while the program is in actions. Sometimes it happens when you are put in the situation where the program is already running and you try to figure out what actually this program is trying to do. So in this case, you just observing while the program is in actions and then try to surfacing the implicit theory, which is sometimes not available in the project documentations. So there's more in the books about how to use workshop interview with some guiding questions. It's very interesting, I guess. And my reflection is, it seems that to do number one is easier, although it's very suggested in the book that number one is important because it need to be collaborative and consultative, having this same understanding from the stakeholders about the programs. But in this case, sometimes need to be combined with 2 or 3, just maybe to check for the consistency and coherence. So I guess that's my reflection when I was involved in the the process for developing program theory. I guess this is another mental model for me for explaining the process in developing program theory. As you can see, it's very similar with the planning and designing process, doing the system analysis, stakeholder analysis, and need analysis, which can be used as a part of the situation analysis. And in this case, you need to do focusing and scoping because we cannot do everything, we cannot solve everything, knowing that we have limited resources, limited time. So in this case, you need to acknowledge your strengths, probably your weakness, your opportunity, your threat as well. And in some cases, maybe you need to do some asset-based analysis. Although in this book is not really discussed in detail about the SWOT, asset-based analysis, but I guess it is kind of similar to that when we're doing the focusing and scoping. And there's another one that is very important, like strategic priority setting, like setting up the boundary where do you want to change, how much do you want to change. I guess it depends on the resource you have and everything about limitation. And then afterward, of course, you need to develop the outcome change as part of the theory of change, and then also attributes of the outcomes, and then risk assumption, and then defining the interventions, which is part of the theory of actions there. So there's more in the books discussing the following, the challenges. I guess this is something, I just highlight three challenges. Although in the books there are more than that, because these three I often experience it when I involve in the programs. lack of theory, because sometimes the program team just stick to the old practice, lazy to find any theory available, and think that this is a waste of time to develop new, identifying, refining theory. Sometimes you got stuck because the teams think that they know the best. They are professional, they are engineers, for example, they're economic expert, they're economists. So they question us when we are questioning the program theory. I found this in one situation, in this case, dealing with economics, for example. The Emperor Ranger clothes, in this case, questioning and eliciting program with poor program theory may damage the reputations. Like, they are uncomfortable if they are being challenged. So they just continue pretending they thought doing a great job. And they thought they achieving just enough success. And this is some kind of challenge. I guess the book also discuss how to address it. But I guess it's very, case by case situations. As is, you will find the answer how to deal with it when you happen to face it, I guess. And how much time and resource should be invested? I guess, yeah, it depends. If this is a long-term program with a long-term outcomes, then maybe it's worth to have more investment in developing the program theory over and over again. Sometimes you put more investments on the program that actually big, like, for example, in one of the donor agency I work with, they decide to focus on the program that $6 million, above the $6 million, for example. Or sometimes you have a program that have a huge size of assumed impact. Like, for example, this is a national programs that impact a lot of poor community in more than 10 provinces, for example. And sometimes you need to have a program theory for a program that have more complexity, more dynamic. There's a lot of level of risk there, a lot of factors that might hamper or hinder the achievement of the program. So you need to check over and over again the robustness of the program theory. And I guess this is come to when is it time to revisit the program theory? And in this case, yeah, different context, different priority, or different change of knowledge base, sometimes leading you to the need for revisiting a program theory. And if there's change of implementation time or change of the implementation team, and change of the stakeholders, you need to repeat again communicating the program theory with this change or not. So you need to be able to revisit again. So this is what I said is more interesting part in the book, that there are a lot of examples of theory change covering the theory of change at different level, individual, organizational, and community level, and policy level as well. And also example of program archetype, advisory, characteristic program, community capacity building program. I forgot there's some other thing, I think. There. So this is just examples. I don't need to go through all of it. Some of you probably already familiar with one of them, like this, theory of recent actions, state of change theory. Sometimes when I see the program, sometimes I thought, oh, this is the theory that implicitly being implemented in the program. And this is more practical, probably, skill building training, conditioning and responsive. deterrence and reward role modeling, probably you get the idea of this theory of change, and more about the change at the organizational and community level. So the book actually highlight very briefly about this theory. I think I put some additional there. I'm not so sure. Like foot in the door. This is something that I might think is very useful. I would love to see the second edition of the book to cover many theory as well. Some theory I don't really grasp the full understanding of. I need to learn and read more book about it. Like for example, diffusion theory and system and mapping theory, or the tipping point. I think I get the idea, but sometimes I'm not so sure how actually this theory works. Empowerment theory, this is often used by the programs in Indonesia, I guess, like pemberdayaan we call it. Sometimes this is something like the challenge here, like I said before, like a new emperor cloth. Sometimes people pretend that doing the empowerment, actually they're not doing empowerment. So this is something that make me realize, understanding the theory is very important here. Oops. Maybe the annotation should be on, mungkin moderatornya atau hostnya di enable kali ya, deactivated the annotation, so somebody actually put the line there. So the reflective question is actually, to what extent actually we as evaluator need to be aware of knowledgeable about the various possible alternative theory, and how to collaborate with program theories. So this is my reflective questions based on that part of the book. I guess, and the next part is actually important, how to use the program theory for monitoring evaluations. I guess this is the basic understanding as an evaluator, that you can only monitor and evaluate better if you have better understanding about the object you are going to monitor and evaluate. So if you don't know how actually the program works, it's probably very hard for you to monitor and evaluate. So in this case, the program theory with outcome change will enable you to prioritize the outcomes and probably risk as well to monitor and evaluate. So this is something that you want to focus on monitoring and evaluation, because you thought that this is very critical. This is something need to be monitored, because you need to know what happens in that level of outcomes. And sometimes using indicators of evaluation, question, sorry, for that. And I guess this is also important for developing the right evaluation questions, particularly for evaluations. I guess talking about the relevance, this is the program theory should be helping you in asking, is it the logic right? Is the logic right? Is it addressing the right problems? As coherence, this is the new ODC criteria, although it's not really mentioned in the book, but I guess it's already discussed a bit, touched a bit on the coherence. Is the design right? Does it have a crucial elements, output and outcomes? Fidelity and efficiency, of course, is it being implemented according to the plans? What are the variations? So this is when you have a program theory and also the outcome, the outcome change and everything. You should be able to develop the right appropriate question and relevant questions related to this criteria. Fidelity and efficiency, effectiveness as well. But particularly on the relevant coherence and effectiveness, I think. And you can use the program theory also for further testing the program theory itself. Like in the book, it put a nice diagrams about it as well. So as you can see here, you can check whether this is a total implementation failure. Is it something wrong in the engagements? Is it something wrong with the theory? Is it some partial failure in the theory sometimes? And what actually causing the failure there? And I think that's my overall thinking about the use of the program theory for MNE. My takeaway is, yeah, as an evaluator, and if you decide to become a serious evaluator, especially if you believe a program theory as a tool for monitoring evaluation, then you should buy the book. I know it's quite expensive, probably. Yeah. I just checked that it's already $87 in the Amazon. Last 10 years, I mean, in 2013 when I bought it, it's only $69. But probably wait for the second edition. I heard that, but Ibu Prof. Patricia Rogers is preparing for the second edition. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ibu Patricia Rogers. And I believe program theory is a great tool that has enabled me prepare myself before evaluation or performing monitoring evaluation tasks. I often try to develop, the program theory and develop the program theory before planning and evaluation or setting up monitoring evaluation system. Even in this very small projects, I guess it's very helpful for me because it will develop your skills and sense in reading, identifying and unpacking and assembling the implicit program theory. The program theory that often is very implicit in the program. Finally, my current challenges, I guess, for the future for myself is actually how to be efficient, because sometimes you cannot keep up with the emerging theories. But maybe I don't need to worry because I just need to install ChatGPT. I heard ChatGPT can answer my worriness about keeping update on the emerging theories. So I think that's all. My highlight of the review. Over to you, Mbak Ari.
Thank you very much, Mas Dwi Agus, for your comprehensive and insightful book review. I do agree with you that this is very useful for a program planner and implementer, from working in a simple to complex program, and I learned a lot from it. Okay, dear participants, if you have got any questions or comments, please write them in the chat box. I will read them during our Q&A session later, or you can raise your hand and say it in the session later. Okay, now I would like to invite our commentator, Ms. Ratna Mathur from the Evaluation Community of India. Ms. Ratna has got long experience in social development programming and grant making in nonprofit organizations. She is skilled in team and knowledge management, analysis, writing, and synthesis. Ms. Ratna Mathur, please, the time and mic are yours.
Thank you, Arya, and thanks to Mr. Stepan Toro for an excellent overview of the book. I share many of his reflections and the hope that there will be a second edition soon. But before I start, I want to thank MONEV Studio and the Evaluation Community of India for starting this initiative. And also that it's an utter privilege to have Professor Patricia Rogers herself present at this discussion, and she will bring so much more new learnings for all of us. Today, I'll just take a few minutes to reflect on a few specific points And this is certainly a classic book. It's very pragmatic. It explains complex content very well. It's easy to read. And it would have helped many, many early learners to the field of evaluation like me. So just for today's analysis, I'm just speaking from a locus standi of, what are the priorities and the level of participation of what we call the target groups and the marginalized communities for whom the development sector works for, and how this reflects, the issues of inclusion, gender, system change, and also the power structures. Because I think what is important for us is a framework of accountability, because when you monitor when you review, you're doing an analysis of public funds, and there is also an ethical and moral stand. And one of the things which normally never gets documented in program analysis is our issues of accountability and of inequality and exclusion. So that's why I really appreciate this book, tracking the philosophical roots and the history of program theories. It's also reflecting the terminology, which helps in understanding how the concepts have evolved and how program theory is a valid approach for evaluation. And also for practitioners, how to navigate the spaces between projects and programs, between the target groups and those who decide about the targets and those who measure the targets. My second point is related to my experience as somebody who facilitated a lot of evaluations when I was working with donor organizations. And so I found in the book the some of the guidance that the authors have given on the traps of theory of change and measurement to be very critical. And they help us to reflect on the realities that are facing the communities or the target groups for whom these programs are being designed. And therefore, I think the book is also, and our discussion today is also an opportunity for us to introspect on what we've designed, and also sometimes on things like unintended results. I really liked the passage about unintended results, which says that it leads not only to poor analysis and to poor policies, but from our experience, we know that it may also trigger backlash, against the people, for whom they are meant to benefit. And I think these are things that we need to include, whenever we design programs. What are the risks, and to make sure that those are included. And this is, it's an increasingly complex and polarized world, where the inequalities have increased so sharply. And maybe because I work a lot with rural women and girls, I really feel concerned about being able to, integrate processes which are sensitive to them in any theories or any design of programs, because everything has an impact on their lives. So I feel that, maybe when Professor Rogers and her co-author write the second part of the book, then, we can reflect more on the choices which are made by the evaluators themselves, because we are also in a position of power when we are doing any analysis of or any monitoring program. My next point is about what the book addresses in part 2, in chapter 4, about the intended users. Again, this is what Mr. Stepantoro has already reflected on when you develop program theory with a small group of people who share knowledge and values, will not work when you develop it with a large group of people with different understandings about how an intervention would work or should work or does work. And the book also goes on to say that time may be needed to negotiate different perspectives. And I feel that, in addition to time, I think intent is also critical, because and this reflects on the power structures, within which we are designing our programs. And particularly those, which involve governments, which involve large corporate supply chains, involve, very, very poor and marginalized communities, within their own countries. And these are policies which work on very large scale, and these are getting larger and larger, as the levels of poverty and exclusion are increasing. So I feel that, our identity as evaluators, where we are standing and what we are able to include, in an ethical framework is also very important. Because if you see at the global level right now, there are, cross-cutting issues of North and South, of inequalities, of gender, of economics, of funding flows, finance mechanisms. And we've seen that reflected in all the programs which are being designed related to food, related to climate, racism, justice, and inequality. So, so I feel that, how do we reflect more in what we design, what we evaluate, and whose perspective is getting reflected, and are the people, who are at the receiving end of the evaluation, how are their concerns getting highlighted for us? Because we presume, our commitment to them. We presume our commitment to, ending inequality, ending injustice. So that's why I feel that, perhaps say like in part 5, where there is a analysis of developing causal inferences, I think I'd like to learn more about that, and I'd like to hear more views about this, from other participants, and also from Professor Patricia Rogers. I'll just end here now by just reflecting 3 specific questions, or which are my reflections actually, that, and these are addressed to Professor Patricia Rogers. And this is related to that, since the time the book was written, how have the ways in which the target groups are being seen as participants and decision makers in the evaluation process, and how do questioning the power structures and the influence of the power holders, how much do they influence the frameworks that are being designed? I think the answer is also in the question itself, but nevertheless it's important to ask. My second question is related to whether there are any new perspectives on some of the tools which are being used now related to program design, and what goes into the theory. For example, RCTs are being used very extensively, and we have a Nobel laureate who has promoted that very effectively. So I'd like to hear some perspectives on how that can influence program design and program theories in future, and also embedding some longitudinal studies on impact in the social sector. My third question, and I'll just end, is about when we design for large-scale system-level transformative change, with policy designs, which are theories which are affecting millions of people, what Mr. Stepantoro also referred to, then how do we embed the micro-level approaches which actually influence the process of, the theory of action and the impact? So, okay, that's it for me. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks to Umi and Ira and Fildaza for the facilitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ratna, for your thoughtful comments for this big review. Okay, dear participants, before we go to Professor Patricia Rogers, I would like to remind you to share your thoughts and questions in the chat box for our discussion later, or you can raise your hand later after Professor Roger presentation. Okay, next I would like to welcome Professor Patricia Rogers from Better Evaluation. Professor Patricia was a professor of public sector evaluation at our MIT University and SOC. She is now visiting professor at the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa, and she has been an evaluator for 30 years and focused on the evaluation system. Professor Patricia, we're so grateful to have you today. Please, the time and mic are yours.
Well, thank you. So thank you very much for the great overview and the really insightful comments and for your interest in it. It's always really, it's terrific to hear that people are finding the book useful. And in terms of a second edition, I'll have to discuss it with Sue, my co-author, whose experience just informed so much of that one. Sue shared something on Facebook. She's apparently in the Antarctic at the moment, so I'll talk to her when she gets back. You know, Sue Funnell was just pivotal in my education into theories of change. She introduced me to it over 30 years ago, and worked with government agencies to do individual theories of change and program theories, and then from that started building up, you know, these archetypes and saying, come on, we can actually learn from what else has gone. So, you know, a lot of her expertise and experience was in that. So I'd be very keen to do a second edition because time has gone on. I've used this a lot I learned a lot working with a lot of different organisations and teaching in this, and people, you know, coming back with great comments and thoughts on it. And, you know, I think, Ratna, your point about power structures would be fantastic to be much more explicit about. And it's good we have the empowerment change theory in there, but we don't perhaps talk about that enough as a making that explicit. It's sort of there in terms of when we who gets involved and who has the power to be involved in developing the theory of change and designing the program. But it would be good to make that much more explicit. I don't want to take up all the space because I want to hear what other people have thought. I guess just a couple of things that I sort of respond to your comments. One of the things I'd really like to do in a second edition is just be a bit clear about terminology and just talk about change theories and action theories, because I think that's critical, and be much clearer about the importance of context there, and that, you know, that so a change theory might be an incentive, that the action theory might be you give them praise, you advance their career, you give them money, you know, that's the thing you do. But they've all the same change theory, which is about incentives. It's different types of carrots, as we sort of heard. And I think that unpacks something that really starts to talk at inclusion and equity and differential effects in ways that are very important, that for some people, these mechanisms have different effects because of their different context. And I'd really like to sort of have that much more mainstream because that's where, you know, one of my concerns about RCTs, and they can, you know, they have certainly their role to play, and they can definitely be informed by program theory, and that's, you know, they can fit together very well. But there's often a tendency to look at average effects, and in order to get, you know, proper sample sizes, the number of contexts you can look at is limited. And, you know, on equity grounds, the average effect isn't the concern. You must be looking at what's the effect for the most vulnerable and the most marginalised. And if it's having negative effects on them, but on average it's good, you can't say, oh, well, it's a good program. And so I think, you know, really unpacking those differential effects is critical, that I'd like to see. So I'd like to just leave it there. I've got lots I'd say, but I'm conscious of the time and I'd like other people to have a chance to respond to some comments. So back to you, Ari, please, if you'd like to pick up some questions or invite comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Patricia Rogers. So I will invite participants to please raise your hand if you got any questions to Professor Patricia Rogers, Mas Dwi Agus, or Ratna regarding this book, or any comment.
So Ari, actually, we have a playlist of questions gathered from the Google form. So perhaps, yeah. So I think we received around 5 questions here. So perhaps later Filza can help. Thank you. In addition to the chat room.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Umi. So we've got questions here from Leonard Yossi and Suraj Jacob. Their question quite similar. How program theory is related to theory of change? And from Suraj Jacob, the question is logic model versus program theory, and similarity and difference between the program theory, logic model, and theory of change. So, please, Professor Patricia.
I could offer us a view on it. I mean, the problem with the terminology is people use it differently. And when I started the book, working on it with Sue, I thought, oh, we'll be able to sort it out. And then I realized, no, people just use it really differently. So I think that's the first thing, is when you're using the terms, you have to see what people actually mean. And in the last 10 years, theory of change has become the sort of umbrella, that is more often used. And so I guess I would interpret it as saying, look, a program theory, is like a theory of change. They're interchangeable. One of the things in the book I'd definitely like to change is we tried using theory of change 2 different ways, with one with a capital and one without, and that's just way too confusing. So I would talk now to say, a theory of change has a change theory and an action theory. What's the change theory? Incentives. What's the action theory? Pay people a bonus or whatever. So that it would just, I think, be a bit clearer on that. And logic model is one way of representing your program theory or your theory of change. I would suggest that as a way to have some clarity and then get on to the other issues.
Thank you, Professor Patricia. Okay, next I will read some comments that go through our chat room. First from Ritu, she said that, oh, this book is undoubtedly one of the best books in evaluation. And there is one from Umi. She said Jakartans call it bukunya daging banget. It means that it's so meaty. It's very useful. And then okay, from Umi again. She mentioned that the presentation from Mas Dwi was insightful and very important book, Professor Patricia, and this is really advancing our M&E work. And she personally found this is the mandatory to combine theory of action in addition to AOC. And it's from this book years ago, and it was not an easy exercise, but it's worth it. And her question is how to apply the theory of action if no predecessor actions or empirical evidence before. For example, the scale and magnitude of the pandemic that we faced recently. Thank you very much. So perhaps we can, Mas Dwi Agus can share his experience regarding Umi's question before going to Ratna and Professor Patricia. Over to you, Mas.
You mean the last questions about how to?
Yep. Mbak Umi's question regarding how to apply the theory of action if no predecessor actions or empirical evidence before.
Well, usually I don't know, based on my observation, usually people just using the common sense or their logic. They try to simplify for example, if they just doing just more trial and try to pick up some some information and learning from the trial. So the theory of action may be just kind of like a hypothesis in this case, like is it, and try to get the information on the response and feedback of it. So keep continuing putting more theory and hypothesis there. And sometimes you get established theory, sometimes you don't. So you keep just being aware. Is this going to work? If we're doing the trial of the certain hypothesis. So in this case, just using your common logic. For example, if there's already known theory about what you call it, changing the behavior of washing hand, for example. So there's a lot of theory of actions that involve about how to do effective campaign, for example. So you just focus on probably theory action that already established, and maybe you can develop ones based on the common sense and logics. That's my answer based on my observation, I guess.
Thank you, Mas Diego. So I guess we should not be afraid to try and have some mistake like that, right, Mas Diego? So perhaps right now, have you got any other experience or different experience regarding Umi's question here?
I think there are very clear explanations given in the book. I think it's very explicitly explained. The basic concepts are very clearly there. I think my issue is that unless the context analysis is done, it's very difficult for anybody to plan things. So therefore, I feel that is an area where whoever is designing anything should be looking at very clearly, because the stakeholder mapping is a very critical process. The kind of partnerships that are possible, how the operationalization of the theory of action will take place. I think these are all very important aspects here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ratna. So, okay, so this is the key stakeholder mapping and the operationalization of the concept. I would like to invite Professor Patricia Rogers to perhaps comment or share her idea. You are muted, Professor.
It's probably helpful to be clear about which way we're using program theory, because there's the version of using it to help design programs, and then there's when something's already in place and you're designing the monitoring and evaluation. And so the second one's easier because what you're doing is trying to make sense of something that's in place, and you can usually go and find people and say, why do you think this will work? How is that going to happen? So you could make explicit something that's implicit in what they do. I think it's quite different to use this for program design. And I think the pandemic is a really good example where people were saying, well, we haven't had a pandemic like this, but we have previously encouraged people to wash their hands. What can we learn from the evidence base that will help us here? And a lot of what can we learn from other epidemics? What can we learn from remote learning for school students and how to support that? And I think that was actually terrific. People were incredibly innovative and entrepreneurial, and not just trying something, but also saying, what's some evidence from the previous history that can guide what we try, and then do rapid evaluations on that. And I think that's really what we need, is a lot of better evidence that's sort of by context, that helps us to not just say, oh, this intervention works, but this intervention, we have evidence it works in these ways for these people in these situations. And so then you can pick the evidence that's going to be more relevant to do it. And that would be my vision for the future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Okay, so I will read again question that shared to us from the questions box earlier before this event. It came from Godfrey Buanika. He asked, what is the principles of program theory? And there is also a question from Dia Lenggogeni. What is the examples of program theory case study? So I suppose they direct these questions to you, Professor Patricia Rogers. Please, over to you. You are muted,
What was the first?
Professor.
Sorry, I was trying to write down the questions and I missed it. The first question was.
It's from Godfrey Buanika. I don't know whether he or she. Okay, so the question is, what is the principles of program theory? And then the next is from Dia Lenggogeni. She asked, what is the examples of program theory study case?
Yeah, I'd be very interested in what other people might have to say about that.
Oh,
Because
so maybe just to add, because I know Lengo is the coordinator for the disaster risk management in Indonesia. So her role is quite important. So I think this is just to give you some context, Professor.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my principles, I think of, what are some sort of guiding rules that you use to guide your practice? And, one of the things in the book that we really wanted to emphasize is there's no one right way to do it, that you need to adapt what you're doing to the situation, how much time you have, how big the program is, how much conflict there is going on, all of those, what sector it's in, all of these things affect it. And so, some of the things for me is the principle is do program theory in a way that suits your context and that is purposeful in terms of what you're trying to achieve by using program theory. So that's the sort of first principle, and then be very pragmatic about it, that it's got to be adding value. And one of the risks, I think, is that sometimes people find themselves endlessly revising logic diagrams and they're not getting value out of it. But really build in how are we going to use it and make sure that you get a good enough version and get on and start using it. And that might mean that you just develop one at the start and then you set up your M&E system, or it might be that you revisit it as you go through. So for complex situations, complex programs, you might want to revisit it much more often and say, does this still make sense? Do we need to revise this to bring in new information? So, particularly in situations of disaster preparedness or response or in recovery, you have a lot of people trying to work together. So having a theory of change where they can all see where their bit is and how they fit together and why different bits are important can be really useful.
Maybe this is related to my question in the slide, Professor, that in the books it says there's going to be, it's useful to have a program theories. Yeah. And sometimes evaluators is not very well equipped with a lot of theory in the back of their minds, so they cannot pick up some this is useful or this is relevant for this program. So I got the sense that the book suggesting to involve program theories, while I'm still wondering who actually is program theorist. It is a new profession to me. So probably my assumption is this program theorist is somebody who's actually expert in subject matters or in the sectors, or maybe academia or academics or researchers. I don't know. So my suggestion is for evaluators who are not yet very confident and well equipped with example or option or alternative of program theory, then you should engage these so-called program theories.
May I add something here, Ari?
Oh yes, please, Ratna.
Yeah, I think, if we look at the point which Ritu has made about community involvement, I think it's not only just what is going into the theory, but also about who all are involved in the process of development. So it need not be a single person or a team of 2 or 5 people sitting in a room and designing a program theory, but it can be a consultative process to work with the people who are going to be participants in the program itself. And I think this has been done fairly successfully, even in large scale programs, say sponsored by the World Bank or by the Gates Foundation on in partnership with governments, because again it brings us back to the issue of accountability and how that is a critical element in in ensuring that what we develop is a robust design which is actually implementable. It can be monitored. Even the theory of change itself can integrate the process of a collaborative monitoring process, a collaborative joint assessment of what is happening to the program. And certainly a lot of government programs, in fact, most of the government programs in India have a mechanism. There are platforms available for communities, to be participants from, right from village and household level up to the level of, of larger systems. So I feel that a lot of the issues which traditionally faced programs which were designed in the global north or which were designed in the capital of a country and then implemented top down. I think the world has gone beyond that stage of that one-way flow of ideas and one-way flow of theories by experts. I feel that whether it is COVID or whether it is social media, whether it is the use of technology, we have very, very powerful voices which are heard and which influence, how any program design happens. And therefore, if we don't integrate those voices, then we are the ones who would be losing, and we would be also wasting public funds in implementation of programs, like even, say a housing program, which does not take cognizance of the context or the requirements of the communities or households who are going to be living there. And we have any number of post-disaster disastrous programs, which have wasted money and which have wasted resources. So I feel that participation needs to be integrated fully into any process that we think of in future.
Thank you very much, Ratna. I would like to add Ritu's comment, which is in line with Ratna. And Ritu would like to learn from Dr. Patricia on how can we engage communities in developing TOC in participatory action research. And she also commented perhaps Constellation thought approach is very powerful way of getting communities involved in TOC. So please, Professor Patricia, offer to you to.
I would rather, if Ritu could have a chance to talk a little bit about her experience of doing this at a community level.
Yeah, open your mic, Ritu.
Please, Ritu, and video as well.
I wanted to learn from Dr. Patricia. I wanted to listen to you. This is not fair. Yeah. I think I will give an example from the Philippines, from a government. Let me give a government example, how it's used at that level. So the Constellations approach is more facilitative and listening deeply and appreciating what communities bring, because that helps to let go the power when you acknowledge that others have something to offer. Yeah. So this is a mindset change of an evaluator or a government official or all external people. So that is that facilitation is key. I want to emphasize, which it's not about using tools that they are important, but they are secondary. That is the first point. And then once you recognize the strengths of the communities, so there's this government official who works in the vocational department in the government. So before they start an intervention, they go to the community, help them realize what the strengths, the assets of the communities, and ask them, what is your dream? And if this is your dream, conducting a self-assessment of that dream. So it is not a ready-made self-assessment which comes from the headquarters, but because the context is so important, as Ratna was emphasizing. So this is your dream, self-assessment of the dream, where communities realize that that is where we are, and what are the things communities can do in terms of their self-assessment of the dream, and what are the additional things where they need support from the government. So then the intervention is developed. For example, the communities said that they have a lot of ginger. Okay. Yeah. So then, but they don't know what to do with that ginger. So they said, okay, the government said we can now install ginger process equipment. But how are you going to ensure that the women, the girls, the most disadvantaged, the disabled, how will they be involved? So that responsibility the community took. So this is an example. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. And one more thing is that in complex situations in participatory action research, I have tried theory of change, not that elaborate because communities don't have time. So, but their dream also changes because circumstances change. So I think in participatory action research or developmental evaluation, theory of change, I think we need to explore a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Ritu.
Hence, I don't know, but yeah, I just tried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ritu. So I guess well, I've got a question. I guess it's the challenge. Then we'll find the balance between up to what level we can involve the community, and then our limited resource, the source of balance. It's difficult to find. Perhaps others have got experience in doing that. Professor Patricia?
Oh, I think one of the things about this the theory of change is very much about listening, and it is about where do you want to get to and how do you think you might get there. And it's not just we'll do these things, but I mean I think the art of developing the program theory is about hearing the sort of invisible change processes. How is that going to make a difference? And sometimes it's about filling some gaps in resources, and sometimes it's about removing some barriers to being able to do things and really thinking about that through, and also about how you're going to get there in terms of are you going to connect people who can help each other? Are you going to bring partners together who can work together? Are you going to do that foot in the door partnership building approach where you're going to work on something small to start with and build the relationships, build the confidence, build the engagement, and then you can work on something bigger. So it's the theories of change can be at all those levels for individuals, how they're going to engage, for organizations, and at every level.
Thank you very much, Professor. So it's so enlightening. So we need to listen and hearing the invisible community members for this theory of change development. Okay, so any more questions or comments? Okay, so from Ritu, self-assessment practices are like pathways to the dream, a simple way to involve communities. If we don't meaningfully involve communities, our programs will continue to be irrelevant. Yep.
Do we have the questions from the question box addressed already, Filza? All right.
Already addressed all, Filza?
Yeah, enough Bu. Already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Umi, shall we close this book review, or we've got like another agenda? Filza?
Next slide, just next slide, yeah, so we can follow the flow.
Okay, so before we go to the group picture, I would like to thank you very much all. I hope you find our book Purposeful Program Theory review today useful. I would like to offer this event to the host, Filza. Please, Filza. Thank you very much, Professor Patricia Rogers, Mas Agus, and Ratna Mature.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you very much, Ibu Ari, for moderating this session from the beginning to the end. And before we jump to the very last session, I would like to inform to you all that Monevpedia always conduct MONEV Book Club. Every 3 months, and everyone is feel free to give the request and also to give any topics for the next MONEV Book Club. Okay, everyone, please open the camera because we would like to take the group picture. Mbak Cindy, can you help for the group picture? Okay, 3, Mbak Cindy, ready for the group picture? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Right.
Hello, Pak Yohanes. Who else? Pak Afra. Okay.
Halo, selamat pagi. Ya.
Alright.
Okay.
Filza, are we done?
Okay, done. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for all the colleagues.
Thank you all. Have a nice weekend. Thank
Okay.
you, Professor
Thank you.
Patricia.
Thank
Thank
you very much. See you
Happy
on the next MONEV
weekend.
Book Club episode
Thank
3.
you. Particular
Okay.
thanks to Professor Patricia Rogers.
Yep.